I saved the family business, but my father gave it to my brother and called me deadweight. I was 25 when I realized my dad's company, Mitchell Tech, was on the verge of collapsing. It was the middle of the night, and I was hunched over my laptop in my tiny, overpriced one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, the blue glow of the screen making the room feel even smaller. An empty Mountain Dew sat next to a half-eaten burrito from some food truck I vaguely remembered stumbling past. The air smelled like old takeout and burnt coffee. My noise-canceling headphones blasted some podcast about the grind-set mentality, something about waking up at 4 a.m. to take over the world, while my fingers flew over the keyboard. I was coding like my life depended on it. And in a way, it did. This was my last-ditch effort to save Mitchell Tech from tanking. Mitchell Tech wasn't some Silicon Valley unicorn. My dad, Bill, started in the 90s back, when software meant clunky desktop programs and tech support involved a guy named Gary coming over to bang on your monitor. For a while, business was good. Then came smarter competitors, cheaper solutions, and a wave of clients who suddenly decided they didn't need us anymore. By the time I joined, we were running on fumes. My dad wouldn't admit it, but I saw the signs. Employees disappearing overnight, bounced paychecks, and my mom suddenly talking about downsizing our lifestyle. My older brother, Alex, didn't care. He was never part of the business, never wanted to be. He had the looks, the charm, and that effortless ability to coast through life. While I was debugging code at 2 a.m, Alex was sipping overpriced cocktails in Malibu, posting thirst traps by someone else's infinity pool. He was our parents' golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Even when he did absolutely nothing, when things got bad, he didn't even pretend to care. I didn't have that luxury. I had an idea, a program that could automate customer data, cut costs, and make life easier for small businesses. It wasn't flashy, but it was practical, and if it worked, it could save us. Cali Brew, a local cafe chain, agreed to test it. If it worked, we'd have a fighting chance. If it didn't, I'd be updating my resume, and my dad would be Googling how to sell a failing company without looking desperate. The night Cali Brew launched our system, I didn't sleep. By the next morning, my inbox was flooded. It worked. It more than worked. The cafes were running smoother. Customers were happy, and the owner called to say they wanted to roll out in all their locations. I told my dad over dinner that night, just a takeout pizza at my place, because that's all we could afford at the time. He took a bite, wiped his hands on his jeans, and said, "Jake, you're the future of Mitchell Tech." I should have known better than to believe him. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed. It was Alex. I hadn't heard from him in months. "How's it going, bro?" "I'm in Malibu. Just picked up some new Yeezys." No mention of the business. No mention of the fact that I had just pulled us back from the brink. Just another casual reminder that while I was drowning in work, he was out there living like he was in a rap video. That should have been my first clue. Life was about to hit me with a plot twist. I didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the start of my success. This was the moment everything started to unravel. Mitchell Tech wasn't just surviving anymore. It was thriving. 3 months after Cali Brew adopted my program, our revenue had tripled. Other small businesses took notice. Word spread fast in the local business community, and suddenly, we weren't just another struggling software company. We were the IT breakthrough out of San Francisco. It felt unreal, but I didn't have time to enjoy it. I was pulling 16-hour days, writing updates, fixing bugs, and onboarding new clients. My apartment looked like a tech graveyard, monitors stacked against the wall, empty coffee cups covering my desk, DoorDash bags piling up in the corner. I lived off Taco Bell and Red Bull. I barely saw my friends. My social life was reduced to Slack notifications and the occasional late night doom scrolling on Reddit. Every now and then, I'd hear my dad bragging about the company to his old business friends, dropping phrases like, "Jake's software changed the game, and we're back on top thanks to my son." It should have felt good. It should have meant something. But the man who once dismissed my ideas as hobby projects still hadn't given me any real control over the business. He still signed the contracts. He still made the big decisions. I was the engine, but he still had the keys. I kept my head down and worked harder. If I could make the company undeniable, if I could turn Mitchell Tech into something bigger than just my dad's legacy, then maybe he'd finally see it. Maybe he'd finally hand me the reins. Then came the Zoom meeting. It was a routine Monday call, just me, my dad, and a couple of our senior staff. We were reviewing our new clients, another cafe chain, a few boutique retailers, even a local gym looking to automate their membership system. Numbers looked good. Growth was steady. At the end of the call, my dad leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said, "Jake, you really pulled us out of a hole." That was it. No ceremony. No big speech. But coming from him, it felt huge. It was the closest thing to a genuine compliment I'd ever gotten. I logged off, sat back in my chair, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. For the first time in a while, I took a break. I actually went outside, walked down to the corner store, grabbed a Coke, and just sat on a bench watching people go by. There was something weirdly peaceful about it. I had spent so much time glued to my screen that I forgot there was a world outside of error messages and debugging logs. When I got back to my apartment, I noticed how trashed the place was. Taco Bell wrappers, empty energy drink cans, a pile of laundry that hadn't moved in weeks. I threw some stuff in the trash, made a weak attempt to clean up, then flopped onto my couch. The exhaustion hit me all at once. I hadn't had a full night's sleep in months, and my body was cashing in on all those IOUs at once. Just as I was about to drift off, my phone buzzed. Alex. I hadn't heard from him since that dumb Yeezy text months ago. "Yo, heard things are looking up. Flying in for Dad's birthday." I stared at the screen. Why now? For months, he didn't care. Didn't check in. Didn't ask about the business. And now, the second things were turning around, he was flying in? Something about it felt off. I put my phone down, but the thought lingered. Why now? The day of my dad's birthday, I drove up expecting the usual. Some backyard barbecue, cheap beer in plastic cups, my mom bringing out a Costco cake with candles that burned out before we finished singing. The kind of family get-together where people wore jeans, argue about football, and pass around stories from 20 years ago. Instead, I rolled up to something straight out of a corporate networking event. The driveway was packed with Teslas, BMWs, and at least one Rolls-Royce, which I'm pretty sure belonged to one of my dad's golf buddies. American flags were draped over the porch like a political rally, and I could hear the hum of a live jazz band, because nothing says casual birthday party like a guy in a bow tie playing the sax next to the grill. I stepped out of my car, still in my usual jeans and my worn Mitchell Tech t-shirt, and immediately felt like I had crashed the wrong event. A guy in a sport coat looked at me like I was about to ask him to valet his car. Inside, it was even worse. People weren't just drinking beer. They were sipping whiskey from crystal tumblers, swirling it like they had stock portfolios to discuss. My dad was shaking hands and laughing way too loud. My mom was fluttering around, making sure everyone had enough truffle-infused something. And then, right in the middle of it all, was Alex. He made an entrance the way only he could, step into the crowd in a tailored Gucci suit, holding an old-fashioned, flashing that same effortless grin he used to get out of trouble since we were kids. His Tesla was parked front and center outside, the vanity plate screaming visionary like he had just been crowned the next tech messiah. I grabbed a drink, because if I was going to get through this night, I needed one. Before I could process whatever weird social experiment this party had turned into, my dad clinked a glass. "Mitchell Tech has seen incredible growth this year," he started. "Thanks to some truly game-changing work, we're stronger than ever." He threw a glance in my direction, and for a split second, I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe this whole show was leading up to him finally acknowledging everything I had done. "Every great company needs a strong leader," he continued. "Someone who understands vision, business, and the future. That's why I'm proud to announce that the new CEO of Mitchell Tech is Alex." I didn't hear the applause. I barely even heard my own breathing. I felt my stomach drop. My ears started ringing. Alex stepped up, shook my dad's hand, and flashed a Hollywood smile like he was accepting an Oscar. People clapped, toasted, and someone even whistled like this was some kind of championship win. Meanwhile, I stood there, gripping my drink so hard I thought the glass might crack. People patted me on the back. They told me how great it was that I had built such an amazing foundation for Alex to lead. Someone called me the genius behind the scenes, like I was just some faceless IT guy making sure the servers didn't crash. Alex finally made his way over, still grinning, still holding his drink like he had all the time in the world. "Don't take it personally," he said, just loud enough for me to hear. "You're the tech guy. You were never a businessman." I clenched my fist so hard my knuckles cracked. I want to say something. I want to call him out, to tell him exactly what I thought. But I could feel every eye in the room on us. My dad was shaking Alex's hand. People were cheering, and I was just standing there, swallowing everything I wanted to say. Why did I even think, for one second, that this would go any differently? Alex wasted no time making his presence felt at Mitchell Tech. The Monday after his big CEO announcement, he strutted into the office like he had just sold a startup for billions, despite never having worked a real job in his life. He slapped backs, threw out buzzwords, and started every conversation with "big things are coming," even though he had zero clue what those big things actually were. Within a week, the office felt less like a tech company and more like the backstage of a reality show. Alex turned the conference room into his personal TikTok studio, filming dramatic slow-motion shots of himself leading a meeting, which was really just him nodding while everyone else talked. He posted clips of himself fake typing, staring pensively out the window like he was solving world hunger, and delivering monologues about the future of innovation, all while the actual engineers were scrambling to fix bugs he didn't even know existed. Then came his team. He called them consultants, but they were just his old college buddies from L.A., guys who once got kicked out of a club for trying to bring in their own champagne. They showed up in designer hoodies, sipping overpriced matcha, and tossing around terms like brand synergy and content verticals. Not a single one of them knew what an API was, but suddenly they had corporate credit cards and job titles like Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Disruption. Budgets started shifting. Instead of putting money into software updates or hiring actual engineers, Alex funneled cash into vanity projects. A high-end commercial starring himself aired during local basketball games. He ordered company-branded sneakers, yes, sneakers, that nobody asked for. One day, I walked into the break room to find a neon sign on the wall that said, "Think big, hustle hard," as if motivational lighting could fix crashing servers. Meanwhile, my team was shrinking. One by one, my best engineers were restructured, which was a polite way of saying they were being replaced by cheaper contractors or pushed into dead-end projects. I tried to fight it, but Alex didn't care about actual work. He cared about optics. He wanted headlines, not results. Then I saw the post. Cali Brew, our biggest client, had just put up an Instagram story. "Huge thanks to Alex Mitchell for revolutionizing our tech. #GameChanger." I stared at my screen, rereading it 3 times. Alex had never touched the code. He probably didn't even know how to log in. And yet, here he was, taking credit for the system I built from scratch. I stormed into my dad's office, ready to lay it all out. I expected some kind of pushback, maybe even a half-hearted, "we'll talk about it." Instead, he sighed like he had been waiting for this conversation and gave me the corporate equivalent of a pat on the head. "Jake, Alex is the face of Mitchell Tech now. You're the tech guy. Just focus on coding." That was it. Not "you save this company." Not "we couldn't have done it without you." Just code and stay quiet. I walked out without another word, but something inside me snapped. If they thought I was just going to sit back and let Alex play CEO while the company burned, they had another thing coming. I sat in my apartment, the glow of my dual monitors casting a soft blue light over the battlefield of takeout boxes, half-empty Red Bull cans, and a stack of unopened mail I had been ignoring for weeks. A cold slice of pizza sat on my desk, untouched since yesterday. The air smelled like coffee, stress, and the faint disappointment of every bad decision I'd made while trying to hold Mitchell Tech together. For the first time in a long time, I felt calm, not because everything was fine, because it wasn't, but because I had finally made up my mind. I was done. For years, I had carried that company on my back, pulled out of the grave, and built the system that kept it alive. And in return, I got a pat on the head, a just code speech, and a front row seat to my brother burning through company money, like a trust fund kid on a weekend in Vegas. Alex had turned Mitchell Tech into his personal playground, complete with influencer photo shoots, pointless ad campaigns, and a team of consultants who wouldn't know a single line of code if it hit them in the face. That night, I cracked open a fresh Red Bull, stretched my fingers, and wrote my resignation email. Short, simple, no dramatics. Just the facts. Subject, resignation. Body, effective immediately. I stared at the send button for a few seconds, then clicked. No turning back. Then I logged into my Robinhood account. Years ago, my dad had brushed off my 15% stake in the company like it was pocket change. Just numbers on paper, he'd said, laughing, like I was some kid pretending to play the stock market. Well, those numbers on paper were now worth around $2 million. So I sold every single share. By the time the money hit my account, I was already sketching out my next move. NexCode. I registered the company that week, bought the domain name, and got to work. If Mitchell Tech wanted to be a corporate influencer brand, fine. They could have it. I was going to build something real. Something that actually worked. No gimmicks. No fluff. Just great software for businesses that actually needed it. First step, rewrite my own code. The real backbone of Mitchell Tech's success. The part Alex took credit for. Without even knowing how to log in, I made it better, faster, more adaptable. Everything I had wanted to implement but couldn't because it wasn't the right time or it didn't align with the brand's new direction. Then I sent one email. Calibrew, hey, I built the system you're using, and I built something better. Let me know if you want to talk. I didn't expect a response. Not right away, at least. They were locked in with Mitchell Tech, right? Probably under some ironclad contract that Alex's business gurus had cooked up between overpriced cocktails. But then my inbox dinged. We're listening. What do you have? I leaned back in my chair, a slow grin spreading across my face. A chance. That was all I needed. The morning after I sent the email to Calibrew, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing against my nightstand. For a second, I thought maybe they had already gotten back to me. But when I grabbed it, I saw Alex's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring. A minute later, a text popped up. Heard you quit. Good luck, bro. We were fine without you anyway. I rolled my eyes and tossed the phone onto my desk. Classic Alex. Acting like this was his victory lap. I wasn't about to waste energy on whatever power trip he was on. Instead, I cracked open a Red Bull, fired up my laptop, and got to work. If I wanted NexCode to take off, I had to focus. By noon, I was deep in code, making the system run smoother, faster. Basically, everything Mitchell Tech should have done if they weren't too busy filming motivational TikToks. My inbox was quiet, my phone was quiet, and honestly, it felt pretty good. No Alex, no corporate nonsense, just me doing what I do best. Then a message came through. It was from an old friend at Mitchell Tech. We hadn't talked much lately, mostly because Alex had turned the place into his personal cheerleading squad. But the text was short and straight to the point. They threw a party last night at O'Malley's, celebrating your exit. Heard Alex call you dead weight. Figured you want to know. I let out a slow breath. Dead weight. Cute. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the message. It didn't surprise me. Alex was always more interested in the optics than the actual work. He needed a villain in his success story, and apparently that villain was me. I grabbed another Red Bull from the mini fridge under my desk and popped the tab. If they wanted to laugh, let them laugh. I wasn't interested in proving anything to them. I was interested in building something better. A few hours later, while taking a break, I made the mistake of scrolling through my phone. There it was, a TikTok from Alex. He was standing in front of Mitchell Tech's office, arms crossed, looking like a discount tech guru. The text overlay read, "The new era of Mitchell Tech. No distractions. No dead weight." The caption? Only forward. I snorted. The comment section was full of the usual suspects hyping him up, talking about how he was revolutionizing the company. Meanwhile, I had a pretty strong feeling their servers were about one bad update away from collapsing. I locked my phone and got back to work. They thought they had won. Then, just as I was about to call it a night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Hey, this is Greg from Cali Brew. Got a second?" I straightened up. "Yeah, of course. Look, we've been running the Mitchell Tech system for a while now, and honestly, it's clunky. Feels slower. Less reliable. It was better before." I stayed quiet, letting him keep talking. "We've been hearing about NexCode. We like what we're seeing. Any chance we could set up a meeting?" I felt a slow grin creep onto my face. "Yeah," I said, leaning back. "I think we can talk." They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. A month after that first call from Cali Brew, NexCode wasn't just off the ground. It was soaring. What started as a quiet meeting over Zoom turned into a mass exodus. Once Cali Brew made the switch, word spread fast. One by one, other businesses followed. Small chains, independent retailers, even a few mid-sized firms that had once been Mitchell Tech loyalists. Turns out, people actually preferred working with someone who knew what they were doing, not someone who just knew how to pose for LinkedIn headshots. My inbox was flooded with partnership offers. Investors wanted in. Tech blogs picked up the story. NexCode, built by the brains behind Mitchell Tech's best years. X exploded with hashtag NexCode Rising. Even YouTube caught on. So I leaned into it. I set up a camera, sat down in my home office, still a mess of Red Bull cans and takeout boxes, and hit record. No fancy lighting, no corporate polish. Just me, speaking directly to the people who actually cared about real innovation. NexCode was built by the people who did the actual work, not the people who took credit for it. If you want software that runs smoothly, is actually supported, and doesn't come with empty buzzwords, you know where to find us. The video blew up. The comment section was wild. People sharing their own horror stories of corporate nonsense, useless executives, and how the real talent in the company always got pushed aside in favor of the loudest talkers. The engagement was through the roof, and more businesses started reaching out. A local news station even wanted to do a segment on the startup taking on Silicon Valley's empty suits. Then, right on cue, my phone rang. "Alex." I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, another call, then a text. "You stole our code. We're taking legal action." I almost felt bad for him. Almost. I sent back 2 words. "Check contracts." See, Alex had never actually understood how the business worked. He thought slapping a logo on something made it his. What he didn't realize was that all the core development, the actual framework of Mitchell Tech's system, had been built by me, under terms that I owned. When I walked away, I took the knowledge, the talent, and the real innovation with me. All they had left was a hollow brand and an overpriced marketing team. A few hours later, my inbox chimed. "My dad, Jake, we need to talk. Maybe we were wrong. Let's figure something out." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back. Too late. I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. A year had passed since I walked away from Mitchell Tech. And in that time, NexCode had become everything I hoped it would be, and more. We had an office now. A real one. Not some shoebox co-working space with beanbag chairs and overpriced kombucha on tap, but an actual headquarters with a team of real engineers, the kind who knew their stuff and didn't need buzzwords to sound important. Clients trusted us. Investors were still circling. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just writing code. I was leading something. And it felt damn good. That morning, I stopped by a Starbucks near the office, just taking a break before another full day of meetings. I ordered a Venti caramel frappuccino. Not because I needed it, but because I could. When you spend years living on gas station coffee and instant ramen, little luxuries hit differently. I took a seat by the window, scrolling through my phone, half reading emails while absent-mindedly stirring my drink. Life was different now. Better. Then the door opened, and in walked Alex. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked rough. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by an old hoodie that had definitely seen better days. The confident swagger? Nowhere to be found. Instead, He hesitated by the entrance, scanning the place like he was trying to build up the nerve to walk in. Then he saw me. For a second, neither of us said anything. Just two brothers who had played completely different hands and ended up on opposite sides of the table. Finally, he walked over. "Jake, Mitchell Tech is sinking. I need a job. NexCode has room for me, right?" I took a slow sip of my Frappuccino, letting the words hang in the air. This was surreal. The same Alex who had laughed in my face, taken credit for my work, called me dead weight. Now he was standing in front of me, looking like he had spent the last 6 months living on instant noodles and regret, asking for a place in my company. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to think it over. "You need a job? What happened to we were fine without you, and only forward and all that?" Alex sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I started learning Python. I could code. I just need a chance." That did it. I actually laughed. Not because learning to code wasn't respectable. Plenty of people made a career out of it. But because the idea of Alex, the guy who once paid someone to do his college statistics homework, suddenly reinvented himself as a programmer, that was comedy gold. I stood up, grabbed my drink, and clapped him on the shoulder. "Good luck with Python, man. I've already got a team." Alex opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but I was already walking out. The automatic doors slid open, and the morning sunlight hit my face. I took another sip of my drink and smiled. Some things weren't worth going back to. It had been a wild year since NexCode took off, and somehow I found myself standing in front of a packed college lecture hall, staring at a sea of eager faces. My old professor had invited me to speak, probably thinking I had some profound wisdom to pass down. Truth be told, I wasn't the motivational speech type, but I figured if I could stop just one person from making the same mistakes I did, it'd be worth it. I wasn't there to sell a dream. I was there to tell them how things really worked. I started from the beginning. The all-nighters fueled by gas station coffee, the endless debugging sessions that made me question every life choice, the gut punch of watching someone else take credit for my work. I told them about the grind, the frustration, the moments where I almost gave up, and then, finally, the moment I decided to stop waiting for approval and build something of my own. A few students were scribbling notes. A couple in the front row nodded like they had already lived some version of my story. And in the very back, Alex. I hadn't seen him since that awkward Starbucks meeting. He looked different, less polished, more ordinary, like a guy who had finally realized the world didn't owe him anything. One student raised his hand. What would you tell someone who's being overlooked? Someone working themselves to the bone, but never getting credit? I leaned against the podium. Work in silence. Let the results speak. If you're good, they'll notice, whether they admit it or not. And if they don't, build something so good that they can't ignore you. In the back of the room, Alex shifted. A minute later, he stood up and walked out. I didn't turn to watch him leave. The next morning, my phone buzzed. My dad. "Jake, we need to talk. Mitchell Tech is bankrupt. Your mother and I, we need your help. And Alex, well, he's not a leader, but he understands business. Maybe you could find him a place at NexCode? He just needs another chance." I leaned back in my chair, stirring the spoon in my coffee. Alex? A leader? That was rich. I had already seen how that played out. I let out a short laugh. I've already seen how Alex runs a business. Dad, I think I'll pass. Silence. Then my dad's voice, harder now. "If you don't help us, if you don't at least help your brother, then as far as we're concerned, you're not part of this family anymore." I took a slow sip of coffee, savoring the warmth, then exhaled. "That's your choice." And with that, I ended the call. Some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt. The smell of sizzling beef and crispy fries filled the air as I stood in line at In-N-Out, waiting for my turn to order. It was one of those rare moments where I actually had time to breathe. No meetings, no calls, no emails, just a good old-fashioned burger run. I had been running on coffee and stress for weeks, so this was my version of self-care. I had just reached the counter, ready to order my usual, a double-double, fries, and a vanilla shake, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Hey, Jake, got any job openings?" I turned around, and there he was. "Alex, He looked even worse than the last time I'd seen him. His once perfectly styled hair was unkempt. His hoodie was wrinkled, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who had been surviving on caffeine and regret. For a split second, I almost felt bad. Almost. I glanced at the menu, then back at him. Maybe delivering burgers for NexCode? Think you can handle that. A couple people in line snickered. Someone in the corner had their phone out, recording. I didn't think much of it at the time. Alex forced a weak laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. Come on, man. I just need a shot. Things haven't exactly been great. I let the words hang in the air. A year ago, he had everything. My company, my work, my father's support. Now he was here, asking me for a favor. I ordered my food and stepped aside. Alex didn't say anything else. He just shuffled to the back of the line, shoulders slumped as if the weight of the last year had finally caught up with him. By the time I sat down with my tray, my phone buzzed. A notification from TikTok. I opened it. Hashtag Burger Revenge was trending. The video, someone had caught our exchange on camera, was already racking up views. Comments poured in. Poetic justice. From CEO to can I get a job? Damn. Karma with extra fries. I scrolled for a bit, chuckling at some of the more creative takes. One user had even edited the video with dramatic music and a slow zoom in on Alex's face when I made my little job offer. Another had clipped in an old video of Alex from his Mitchell Tech days talking about leadership and vision. The contrast was brutal. I took a slow sip of my shake, savoring the moment. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about validation. Proof that I wasn't crazy for walking away. Proof that I wasn't just some background player in my own story. My phone buzzed again. An email this time. Subject, job application. Sender, Alex Mitchell. I let out a low whistle, shaking my head as I read it. A formal cover letter, a resume padded with vague, consulting gigs, and a request for interview. I closed the email without responding. Then I picked up my burger and took a bite. Revenge never tasted so good.